girl.
Hi.
We're here. Season 2, episode 5.
Yes. John Bramlitt.
Oh my God. Like the sweetest man.
Yeah. He's another person where he just has one of those voices that is just like so calm and easygoing and just calming to talk to.
Yes, absolutely. And for all that he's been through, that's like pretty impressive that he's just this calming sort of force. That's why we chose barbecue sauce for his Ted Lasso quote for this episode. Because if you guys remember, if anyone watches Ted Lasso, and I'm sorry if I'm ruining it for someone, but it's been out for this episode's been out for 3 years, so get on it. But this is when, he's got the dart and he says barbecue sauce and just nails it and wins. And it's like this gentle spirit of Ted Lasso, but winning and doing really, really well, right? In that moment. And John has a lot of those moments. And as you guys will hear, like is a very impressive human whose epilepsy made him go blind. And as a young man. And that's definitely not something all of us could come back from.
No, and he talks about having an invisible disability and a visible disability.
Yeah.
And again, not all of us have both. A lot of us are really just, doing one. Not to say just because they're both hard. But he talks about his experience with both of those, and it's really interesting to kind of hear him compare and contrast.
So we want to send a big thank you to SK Life Science and Neurelis for being the bee in our barbecue sauce. Yes, I did.
Yes, thank you so much for, making this a possibility and keeping this going for us. Wouldn't be here without you. And not only are you, supporting us, but you guys are family.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I know. The Ted Lasso stuff is getting me emotional.
That was really good. That was really good. Okay. Lexi's teed you guys up for this episode.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to What the F. We are so stoked today because we have a person that we admire very much on our show, John Bramlitt. And before we dive in to conversation with John, I'm just going to try and do a brief bio, even though that's hard with John to do a brief bio because he does so much and has done so much. But John primarily is an artist. One that, Lexi and I have looked at his website and been like, I want that one. I want that one too. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. It's in our podcast description. He's also a museum consultant. And in many ways, like one way that he consults museums is he teaches the docents who are the the trainers, not the trainers. I'm having an epilepsy brain moment. They're the people, the guides. There it is. Found the word, guide.
There you go.
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. The docents are the people who guide other people through museums, and John has trained them on how to work with people with disabilities. John also has done workshops at museums, from small museums to middle-sized museums to the Met in New York City. No big deal. Also, John is a speaker. And that range is just as broad, from speaking to little kids to going to universities and speaking at galas. And he describes his speaking style as unorthodox, which is something we're going to talk about later because that's pretty cool. And John, just in case he wasn't busy enough, he and his wife opened a gallery called Bramblett Yellow Dog Art Barn Gallery in Denton, Texas. And that's new and should definitely be checked out too. So, John, thank you so much for being here with us today. We are so stoked to have this conversation with you.
Oh my goodness, guys. I've been looking forward to this. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we also have to mention that John's backdrop he's like, oh, I was just painting. This is like no big deal, just painting. It's so cool. It's just
thank you. This is part of it. It's a panel that goes way up. it's going to be part of a mural for a children's hospital, and it's a bunch of panels. But I just started it, so right now it's a bunch of scribbles of butterflies.
My scribbles look a lot different. That looks beautiful.
Yes,
Oh, thank
absolutely.
you, thank you.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be nuts after a while. It's got all kinds of color and craziness.
I love that.
I know. Can't wait to see it. And perfect place for it to be in a children's
Yes.
hospital.
Exactly.
So we want to kind of start off, John, with how epilepsy entered your life, and start there. But we are so excited to also talk about not only that entered your life, but the things that you're doing now that are so truly incredibly amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. I think I was born with epilepsy, but like my first major seizure that I had, I think I was 2 years old, and then I had seizures just from then on, and I didn't have it that much. Like every once in a while I would have one, but I was probably like 10 or 11. I started having more and more, and then later on past that, I ended up getting Lyme's disease, and but that was over 20 years ago, and I live in the South. I live in Texas, and Lyme's disease wasn't really a thing down here that we look for.
Mm-hmm.
And the seizures were just going nuts, but my neurologist, we were just trying to get the seizures under control, and but it was something that I lived with my whole life. I was really fortunate though, because I just have an incredible family, and they always made sure, like my mom always had a philosophy where she wanted to keep me safe, but not like be overprotective. So I would go water skiing, and I drove dirt bikes. I was in karate. I was on all these things, and and bless her heart, because she's also a worrier, but she might worry about it, but she never tried to hold me back with anything. So I was really fortunate with that.
Yeah.
And help. I think my mom and dad helped to engender like this philosophy where you just try to do things, and so
totally.
thanks, mom and dad.
Yeah. Yes, shout out to mom and dad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But man, but what you guys are doing though is so important, because I know, reaching out and making this forum where people can talk about these sort of issues and things, because I know growing up there wasn't really a whole lot, for me back then, like, and I, whenever I would go to the hospital, I'd meet other people, and, but other than that, like in real life, it was just sort of a hidden disability. And I remember being, as a kid, you would never want anybody to kind of know, like, because as a child, you don't seem different than anybody anyway, and
right.
it's like if somebody would say like, hey, I've got a birthday party, can you come to it, in a week or so, and you're like, yeah, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking like, man, I hope so,
That's so true.
Totally.
I'd always kind of put the disclaimer out of, but just this might happen, so put me down as a TBD.
Yeah, so which is weird, so like if it's a good friend, then you can tell them, you're like, well, I'll sure try. But if it's somebody you just met, and you're like, I really like this person, but I don't want to have to describe my entire backstory to them.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at the party, but I don't know. It's just weird little awkward conversations, and but a forum like this, like what you guys have built, is so brilliant, because we get to hear other people, and we get to see that we're not the only ones that deal with that. And
totally.
and we're not alone with it, and
right.
So and we pick up tips with how to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I think too, like just talking about how creating resources is huge, and that's definitely something that you do. But before you started doing that, before you started making this more inclusive and something that not only people can connect to, but maybe people who have nothing in, no connection to epilepsy can also connect to, which is really, really amazing. Art was kind of always your passion. You went to school for art, correct? For a college or no?
No,
Did I miss
didn't.
it? I messed it up.
No,
Yep.
no,
Okay,
no,
here we go.
no, but I should have. I just didn't. I thought trying to make a professional career as an artist was silly. Because
and then here you are.
How in the world would you make a living doing that? But I have a weird brain. I think I could draw before I could walk. So growing up, I took every class I could on art, and I'm obsessed with it. and always have been. And by the
Mhm.
time I went to college, I could draw the blueprints for a house. I could do portrait work,
Oh,
cartooning, all these different things. So all my time was
yeah.
doing art. But then I went to college for writing, because I also love writing.
Me
But
Mhm.
too.
so creative
Love.
writing and lit, and so that's what I thought. I thought, oh, maybe I could teach. But the way that I would write is that I would always draw out the stories first. I always would draw everything out so that I
Oh,
would have
that's
it clear in my mind.
crazy.
So then I could write about it. But the drawing was always for me. I drew every day. Growing up, I was sick a lot. I have the epilepsy. I had kidney problems. Had a kidney removed by the time I was 7, and then ended up
Oh,
getting the Lyme's disease
goodness.
along with that and the epilepsy. And
Ugh.
I was in and out of hospitals a lot and just had a lot of bad days. And art's a
Mhm.
brilliant way to deal with a bad day. You're not thinking about the past. You're not worried about the future. All your focus is just on what it is you're doing at that moment. And that's just brilliant. So
Yeah.
I just did art for myself, and it was my way of being able to be a healthy kind of person and be able to deal with things. But on a good day, art's a great way to celebrate a good day. So I
Oh,
literally
I love
drew
that.
every day, and would get
Yeah.
stacks and stacks of papers, and then when they were filled up, I would throw them away to make room for more. And it wasn't about keeping the art; it was just about having it. But the idea of as a career, that you know I don't know, like art was my passion, but I love hearing stories, and I love reading, and so I thought, would that be a good way to actually get a job, and because with the epilepsy, I thought maybe being a teacher, a professor would be
Totally.
a good job for me, because if I have a seizure or something at the college, they're very progressive, and it would be something that I could do. But the idea of doing art as a profession, that just seems crazy, like a crazy person. I don't know.
All right.
That's what I've done for ever since college. But so I guess I am a little bit of a crazy person. I don't know. It
Oh
fits.
my gosh. If all these beautiful, pieces that you make you a crazy person, then sign me up.
Oh,
Absolutely.
well,
Absolutely. And
thank
I
you.
love how you say too, like, if you're having a bad day,
Yeah,
art's a great thing to do. And if you're having a good day, art's a
such a
great thing
healthy
to do.
outlet.
Like it seems, and I feel like when you find that thing that
Mhm.
works for you, and for you it's art, for some people it might be
For you,
yoga,
it's running.
or yeah, for me it's running.
Mhm.
Although sometimes on bad days I can't run. So,
Yeah. We
but
always yeah, have
yeah,
substitutes for those days.
yeah, but I even remember too, like even when my brain was just completely tapped out from too many seizures and all these things, friends gave me coloring books, like, and a good friend gave me an adult coloring book where it's just like there's a lot of swears in it, and it's like, a lot of and so it's fun, and so it's got these like cute little chipmunks, and it's like, why don't you go fuck off, and, and you're coloring that in, because like my brain couldn't really do much more, but even doing that
Mhm.
was really helpful. So I like that, but I love how that I feel like art is a thing that is pretty tangible to do, even in the smallest form, when you are having a bad day.
Mhm.
Not necessarily in my case going to be good, but it is, you can doodle. How was your college experience? You went into creative writing, then you became an artist.
Yeah, I went to college for computers, really, in the first semester. And I mean, that's what I wanted, because I worked in IT and stuff. I'm a huge nerd. And so that made sense. But
Nerds are the best people. Yep.
but my very first class on the very first day was an English class, and I hated English in high school. Just hated it. Ugh, it was just awful. But on that very first day of the very first class, it was just awesome. It was just amazing. And I was having a lot of seizures. I tried
Mm.
college before this, and I'm a great study. If anybody wants to know how to do everything wrong, like just don't do the things I did when I first went to school, and that's great. Just do the opposite, and you'll do great.
Me
Because
too.
I went to a junior college right out of high school, but I didn't tell anybody that I had epilepsy.
Mhm.
So I was doing really well in classes, and then I would have these massive seizures and miss like a week or two, and go
Yeah.
back to school and not tell anybody why I had missed.
Mhm.
Not the teachers or anybody. I just want to keep it a secret. And so,
Yeah.
of course, like, you want to be independent, and you're an adult, and you're out there, and you're trying, and you're trying to prove that you can do things. And
Mhm.
it's a hard lesson to learn sometimes, that sometimes the most adult thing you can do, and the strongest thing you can do is to ask for help, or to tell people,
Yes.
or to be
Be
your own
vulnerable.
advocate, and tell people, like, well, I can't do that right now. I'm gonna have to take a moment, or I'm gonna take some time. And that's a strength that it's hard to come by sometimes. You have to grow into
Totally.
it. But once you can,
100%.
like, I left school then because not being honest with the school wasn't a very good move. But then I was thinking, after a while, after some years, a few years, I thought, if I don't go back to college, I never will. I should give it a try. And then I ended up having these massive seizures because I had the Lyme disease, and it went up, and I'd had the Lyme disease for years, and we didn't know, and that everything was just ramping up and just getting worse and worse. And I started having these seizures that I wasn't coming out of, and ended up where, like, my breathing would stop and my heart would stop, and ended up causing some brain damage that damaged some of my hearing, where I lost, like, certain tones, and the optic nerves got damaged, and a few other little things. But the main thing was the vision. And my neurologist said it was like getting hit in the back of the head just over and over, and
Oh,
to the point where, like, where the nerves, optic nerves, are going to the occipital lobe, the connection just wasn't there anymore. And I thought I had to leave school. I thought everything was over. I was doing well with the epilepsy, but it was everything I could do to, like, my grades were really good, but it was everything I could do to be there and doing that. It was full-time job, just trying to deal with all that. And, the blindness wasn't going to make it easier or better. So I thought, well, this is it.
no.
So
Yeah.
I went to the Office of Disability, and I went to the director, and Ron Venable was the director. And I said, like, well, Ron, I got to go. It looks like my eyesight. And he's like, what do you mean? Where are you going? And I was like, well, I can't be in school anymore. He was like, John, don't be so stupid. He didn't mean pretty well. He could call me stupid by then, but he said, you can do anything. You can be anything. You have no idea what's out there. Like, you have no
Shout
idea that
out to Ron.
I
Shout
was
out
just
to
about to
Ron.
say, yeah. I
Because
mean, where would you be had he not been there at that moment when you wanted to, give up? Understandably, I would want to do the same thing.
oh
right.
my goodness.
But I mean, just the fact that the one guy was there to be like,
You
no,
can do
you can still do
anything
it.
to still say it. Just to
And
still, that's
yeah,
amazing.
I just knew he was lying. I just knew it, but I thought it was so. I just thought it was so nice of him, just to be trying to make me feel better by telling me all
Yeah.
these sweet lies.
Sure. Yeah.
But I couldn't let Ron down. But I had zero faith in myself. I had zero hope. I thought everything was over. Because I went from being able to travel independently to having to learn how to eat in new ways, where I didn't like
Yeah.
knock my water all over the glass, and then me on the table, and then getting around my apartment, and then every time I would leave the apartment, learning new skills where you're, every time, even if I had a sighted guide, I would come back with bumps and bruises and scrapes, and because I didn't know how to travel yet, and I was an English major, and I was functionally illiterate, which I think is kind of funny. Really, I've got a dark sense of humor, but I
So do
would go to
we.
English class, and I couldn't read the stories, I couldn't write the papers, but the school made it where I could still go to classes, and I would get incompletes because I was really worried that if I left school, I would never go back. And I just didn't want to lose anything else. So I would go to school. But
Sure.
the silver
That's
lining
really
is I did my homework. I couldn't do the reading or writing. So,
Right.
but
you were definitely learning a new way. I mean, you were learning a new way of living. I was an
Yeah.
English major too, so I can vouch for what you were learning was way harder than the fucking texts we were reading and writing essays about, Like, I'm not trying to take away from, but that is, what you were learning is a new way of life. It's a new way of living, and that's much harder than any English major.
Well, gosh, I don't. I know that I was really angry, and I was really depressed then, and I didn't want to. I didn't even realize how angry I was, and I tried not to let it show.
Sure.
And I was just doing everything I was supposed to. I was learning the orientation mobility, like the cane training, and there was a good thing though because of the damage, but from the seizures. It made it easier for them to be able to control the seizures. It's like before a storm, you don't know where the lightning is going to strike. But after, where the trees have burnt down, you can see, like, oh, so this is where it's starting, and that's where it's going through.
Yeah.
And then they found the the Lyme's disease. Like one of my neurologists had gone to a convention and had heard about Lyme's disease. They started, more and more awareness started to be about it. And he thought, wow, that sounds a lot like John. And so they ran the test for it, and sure enough, I had it. And then, so the two together made it where they were able to do better treatments, and it was able to bring the seizures under control. Because up till then, like the prognosis just wasn't good. Like the neurologists were saying, any of these seizures could be the last one because we just it's just
what a
and
tough way to live. I mean,
you know
just like especially that again, you're at college, it's that age. There's just so many factors in there that like I can't imagine.
Who I had the most respect for is my parents.
Mhm.
In a way, I think it was easier for me because I could deal with it. I mean, I was doing, it was like,
Yeah.
Sure.
but
They had a front row seat to just watch their kid,
yeah,
go through a
yeah,
hard time.
yeah. I feel like, I don't know, but
No, we talk to caretakers too, and and hear the other side of it. And there always seems to be a common theme between the person living with epilepsy and the caretaker, and there's like a guilt from the person living with epilepsy, like, I feel so guilty that I put them through this, and the caretaker
yes, oh
being
my goodness,
like,
yes,
Yes.
a
We talk about that with
caretaker being
parents all
like,
the time.
no, I don't, I just wish I could take it away. I just wish I could, I wish it was me. There's a lot of that common, those commonalities, I feel like, in the people
oh
we
my
talk
goodness.
to.
Thanks so much for saying that. That's really good to hear because I know like one of the reasons I was working so hard on the cane and all that everything that I was because I was in college because I had this idea for a career, you have future and all this stuff. But then that changed to thinking I just want to get a job. If I can if I try really hard in college and if I can get through it, maybe I can get some kind of job and I just won't be a burden on my family.
Yeah.
I feel better about it now though. I don't feel so much like a burden,
Yeah.
but getting through that, I mean, there's so much weight that you carry, and
Mhm.
it was such a relief when finally I didn't feel that, and when I wasn't carrying that as much anymore, and I felt like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
like, well, there's some days I'm more like a James Bond martini, more shaken, than stirred. There's other days where I'm not, and it's a day to day thing, and for me, for the longest I felt like the epilepsy was like a monster that was just there, it was lurking in the
Yeah.
shadows, and it would just pounce. I didn't know when it was going to do it,
Totally.
and,
Yep.
and 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 I felt like it was just this thing or this thief that was always there, was stealing my time. It was stealing the future. It was just stealing everything. And then,
I can tell why you wanted to be an English major. You are great with metaphors. Like,
oh, man, what do I?
like you
Thanks so
called it a
much, ladies. I
monster, then you called it
appreciate
a
that.
thief,
You
So,
and
got
I
an
was
A
like,
plus.
yes, yes, it
A
is
wow,
plus from
all
the
these
English
things.
teacher.
you know, there was this time though that it suddenly, like, one of these days I was painting and I was thinking, this the epilepsy I have, it's not something it's not something different than me. It is me. It's part of me. It's another part of me, just like how tall I am, or there's some days I have more seizures, some days I don't. The days I don't. And the days I do, it's just another part of me. And whenever I started to accept it, not being a monster, but just being a part of me, I wasn't exactly excited about, but
Yeah.
it was still a part of me. Then I stopped fighting it because I would just push myself so hard that whenever I was having a good time, like whenever I wasn't having seizures, I would work so hard and I would play so hard because I'd want to get as much in as I could during the time
Yeah.
that I had, and that would just make me more tired, and then that would make the bad times worse. And then I started getting like more rest. I started taking care of myself and started treating that part like it was me, and
Yeah.
it wasn't something I had to fight. And
I think that's a
I don't know
huge
if it,
part of acceptance,
yeah, and
is just that,
it's not silly. It's just a
and
thought, isn't
we've
it?
talked about this so many times, just how acceptance, can be very fluid, especially when it comes to epilepsy. It's sometimes you're like, yes, this is a part of me and I don't like it, and that's just what it is. And sometimes you're like, fuck this. This is not a part of me. This is the thief. This is the monster. This is, this is outside of me. And I think, it's normal to kind of fluctuate between those
Yeah.
feelings and emotions, because it's normal to fluctuate with anything like that, that you're trying to accept and work with. and is a part of you.
Yeah. You're sorry. One thing about the blindness, I think that helped with all that, with the epilepsy, is that it forced me to slow down, because I would literally walk into trees and walls and things because so I literally had to slow down in my life and start learning how to travel in new ways and how to think about every step you're going to take and make mental maps and all this stuff. And then,
Yeah.
so having to do that and figure out new ways to do everything, it gave me this opportunity, I think, to kind of think about the epilepsy in a new way.
You get thrown this huge curveball, and in your 20s, and then you start becoming an artist, and
Yeah,
like
how do you do that?
Yeah. What do you mean? That is make perfect sense. You lose your eyesight and you go into the visual arts.
yeah, well,
That
yeah,
is
it's really fucking
so.
cool.
Well,
Like,
Yeah.
it's on growing up. Art was huge for me, and that's how I dealt with things. And I was so depressed, and I was incredibly angry, and
understandably
I
so.
was losing
Yeah.
my mind. Like I was just losing. I was just incredibly angry, and so I mean, just I can't even put it into words. And but art had always been my way of dealing with things. But after about a year, I could leave my apartment, and I'd gotten my cane skills to the point where I use a guide dog now, but I used a cane then, and I could leave my apartment and I could travel. I live really close to the campus, but I could cross the roads that I needed to, and not get hit by a car, and not knock over too many people, or trip too many people with my
All good
cane.
things. All good
This
things.
is a
Yeah.
constant thing when you use a cane, like on a campus. You're always tripping somebody. But but then I could find the right building, and then I could find the right classroom, and then find the right seat finally. And I thought, man, if you can cross streets of cars and all this chaos using a stick and these new techniques, then surely you can navigate across a canvas if you just use the same techniques and
Wow.
combine it with art
Oh,
techniques that I knew. So I'm using
that
art
is
techniques from hundreds of
beautiful.
years ago, and
Yeah.
and O&M, orientation and mobility techniques that you use for a cane, and putting them together so that you can feel the lines on the canvas. I used to draw with pencils, pens, charcoal, all that fun stuff, but I can't
Hmm.
feel that anymore. So I started painting, which I never painted when I was sighted because I didn't think I'd be a good painter, and I didn't have enough courage to try something that I wouldn't be good at. But now, though, if I was bad at it, at least I wouldn't have to look at it. So you might as well give it a go. But but it
That's
was
absolutely fucking amazing. Like
but
you'd
it was
never
Wow.
painted before, and
well, oh
and
my
you and
goodness.
also the application of, your new disability to the canvas is
Well,
your of technique. That's really
Mhm.
really amazing.
I was so sure that I was out of my mind. That I
Sure.
figured,
Yeah.
and I kept it a little bit secret as much as I could for a little while, not long, but word gets out quick when you're covered in paint. But
And
I
it looks
had
good, I'm
yeah.
sure.
Well,
Yeah.
then it's like,
Yeah.
well,
You've
I
got
had a
these
little white dog.
masterpieces.
Oh my goodness. Well, I started with oil paint, and I had this little white dog, and I didn't realize how hard it was to get oil paint off your hands. Like I'd wash my hands really well, and I was thinking like, surely they're clean by now because I've been washing them forever. And my little dog would come over and like, oh, you're so cute. And I'd pet her, and friends would come over and say, oh, why is Anne green and orange and purple? Like, I don't know.
Oh,
She just gets
cute.
into things, guys. She's a crazy
Yeah.
little dog. Word got out, but I really thought that because there weren't blind painters, so the idea was just sort of there was one guy in Turkey,
Yeah.
but I didn't know him and he didn't know me. We're sort of doing our own thing, and
Mhm.
so I just thought it was nuts. And but it was a perfect storm though of this renaissance of technology that we have that lets
Mhm.
people who are blind have access to things that are written. Before it was only Braille, and so there were no books on painting or books on art like for people. Like the only books and things you could
Oh,
read were what other people thought you might want to read. So so
yeah.
now though with the
Right.
new technology, you can read anything, any book, any article. You could read a book from 300 years ago. You could read a
Wow.
Facebook post from a second ago, and so suddenly you have access to everything, and
Mhm.
you have all these people that are getting advanced degrees in orientation and mobility, and all they do is just sit around the house all day and just think about better ways for blind people to cross the road and come up with
Mhm.
better techniques and stuff. So it's like this
Yeah.
perfect meeting in time where, you know, so it's just, I don't know, it turned out to be brilliant. But I started doing that, but because basically, you know, if you're a sighted artist or if you're a blind artist, you only use your, you know, if you're a sighted artist, you only use your eyes for a couple of things, as it turns out, to know where
Okay.
you are on a canvas and where you've been. And if you're blind, you're going to use your sense of touch to know where you are. You know, no matter what you're doing, if you're getting
Sure.
around a room, you can
Yeah.
feel where you've been. Same on the canvas. You can draw a line. You can feel the line that you drew. You know, it
Okay.
has a texture to it. With practice, you can start building up techniques where you can make that better and better and more effective. And with paints, like there's so many ways for color. I thought color would be the hardest. Turns out color
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
super easy.
that's my question is
And
like,
so it's like I'll braille my paint. So this
Oh,
is a light yellow.
wow.
So
oh,
I'm really lazy when it comes to braille. So like on this, I just have an LY, you know, for light yellow. And
that's
then
not lazy.
Yeah,
and I
what?
have, well, gosh, writing light yellow is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have tons of mediums. So in a medium, it's just stuff that you can mix in with paint to make the paint feel different, changes
Okay.
texture, its viscosity. So I have racks and racks of different mediums. So one of my favorite ways to mix color is to just make the colors feel different. And so
Oh,
I can
cool.
mix a white so it feels like toothpaste, and I can mix a black so it's runny and kind of it
Oh,
feels like oil,
cool.
slimy. And
Wow.
so on the palette, they're very different. If it's a thick paint, then it's got to be white. You know, if it's the other, it's got to be black. But also, you can control the color. If I want a gray between the two, I just mix for the texture to be
Uh-huh.
between the two. So, and it
That's
gives you a very
insane.
precise way of doing
I'm
it.
okay. I love how you're describing this because you're making it sound so simple.
It is so simple. Oh my
But
goodness.
it's
Um, I,
not.
I,
Like this is
I,
fucking
Well,
incredible.
I I have taught hundreds of visually impaired people how to paint, and we're working actually
Oh,
with 7 or 8 different
awesome.
states now. So children who are blind are learning how to paint because, and this is something that I
Wow.
didn't realize, but when I started, because I really thought I was out of my mind. I didn't think anybody would ever see a painting of mine. It wasn't even a thought. I just didn't want to be so depressed all the time. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then, but the way that I paint, though, you're basically practicing your cane training, like your ability to get around. So the more you paint, the
Mm,
easier it is to navigate a room. The easier it is to know like where your water is, what's on your plate. Everything, like your mental maps, start to explode. So we're starting to teach children who are blind, and
that's
their
awesome.
ability it explodes. Like, I mean, it's so crazy that like you'll have these kids that they're each brought into the classroom. They have a guide that'll bring them in. After a couple of weeks of learning to paint, they're running around. They're getting their own paper. They're
Ah.
you know they're talking to their friends, and the teachers are like, "This is awesome." I mean, before everything
Yeah.
was nice and quiet. Now it's kind of chaotic, but and
Oh.
so
But you but
it's
you also
fun.
teach sighted people how to paint, correct?
Yeah. Oh man. And so like in the
And
Guggenheim
what's that
event,
look like in your
EMA.
workshops and things like that that we
Oh
mentioned
man.
in your bio in the beginning? But what does that process look like? First of all, Lexi and I have talked about this, and we're like, we need to take a workshop from you
Yeah.
because it just sounds so
I have
amazing. But what
no
is it?
artistic ability.
Well, oh man, yeah. I wish, man, if one of these days, if you guys can get down here, or if I'm up there, but if you can get down to my gallery, I'll blindfold you. Okay, here's what it
We're
sounds like
like
a bad thing, doesn't
stepping,
it?
yeah, we're
No
stepping
big
back. We're like,
deal.
And there's
what?
there's a workshop that I love to do where we blindfold everybody and we give them paints where I've made each color feel different, and I'll give everybody raised line drawings that I've drawn where you can feel the lines on it, and then in about
Okay.
5 or 10 minutes of giving some instruction, everybody's painting, and it's cartoon like painting. But you can tell the red paint from the yellow paint. It sounds crazy, but it's funny how your brain starts to adapt. And it's funny because kids will jump right into it, and adults will,
Sure.
they're like, I don't know, I don't see how this really works. And then about 10-15 minutes into it, they're like, oh, and it just sort of clicks, and they're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it says about me, but like I've been doing these workshops for about 15 years, and
Holy
the
cow.
first time I did it, we went to Shreveport, and I was doing it with the city of Shreveport, and I think I painted with about 1,500 people the first day, and I blindfolded
What?
them. And I went back home and I was telling my friends, I was like, oh man, I spent all weekend blindfolding kids, and not one of my friends was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's
Right, like,
weird.
I need more
Whoa.
context, yeah.
They're like, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that seems about like you. So I was like, I was teaching them to paint, by the way, guys. I wasn't just blindfolding
Oh,
children,
yes.
but
I'm like,
and it-
"Go." Yeah.
but like you were saying, like it sounds hard, and it's really not. And one of the cool things is that it's really easy to teach, and it's not expensive. I was doing some work in Brazil, and then
Nope,
um,
okay, I'm sorry, can we pause? I was doing some work in Brazil. What work in Brazil were you doing? Let's just
oh,
let's start there.
Delta had me out to paint a 737 for the Rock in Rio concert. It's
Whoa.
like
That's
it's the
so
biggest concert.
cool.
Like 1 million people go to it. It's the biggest concert on earth, and so they whenever I hear music, I see color. So they were like, "Hey, that sounds cool.
Wow.
Paint whatever you want." And I was like, "Well, I can do that. I can paint whatever I want. That sounds great."
Yeah.
So I was working on that, but then I had they they gave me the choice because they sent me all the music. So it's like Justin Timberlake, Lady Gaga, all these people, and that I got to work with it. And it was like either I could go to the concert and hang out there, or 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 they would fly me all over Brazil, and I could go to like the School for the Blind. I could go all these different places. So
Oh,
I'm a huge
Wow.
nerd, so I did the thing where I could go to all the universities and the School for the Blind, and
I would have chosen the same thing. That just sounds so awesome.
yeah,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I did that, and then and because of that, I the government there would reached out to me like a little while later, and they wanted me to come back and to do some work where we took art from people who were visually impaired in Brazil, and
Mhm.
we did some things in Brasilia, which the capital, and in Sao Paulo and Rio, and
Wow.
but Brazil they have a hard time. Their economy is just awful. But our State Department over there, they wanted the program to go forward, so they stepped in, and they made me a cultural ambassador for the U.S. so that I could go there and I
Oh
could
my
do that.
god.
So our country paid for all that to happen so that we could go over there
Wow.
and spread our culture. And I just think that's brilliant. Like that's one thing I know I'm not a huge fan of all parts of the government, but I think that was really cool that they did that.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
And one of the neat things about it too is that like the way that I paint, it's not expensive. It's just techniques, and it's
Mhm.
not. So it's just something that can be taught. So when one person
Mhm.
knows it, and you teach it to one person, then they go off and they teach it to others. So I spent a lot of time teaching specialists over there, how I paint, and they're just keep doing it and
And then
doing
it's
it,
just
and
it's
there's just hundreds and hundreds of
well, I mean, it's kind
visually
of like
impaired painters
the
over there now.
butterfly effect, which is suits the mural behind you right now
Oh yeah,
on theme. It's
oh,
very on theme.
that's funny. Yeah,
Yes.
It's the butterfly effect because honestly that's very beautiful that I mean you've talked about different states, you've talked about local, then you've talked about now we're in an international territory, all of your work
Mhm.
and your enthusiasm and your love for just integrating a new way of thinking and something that has brought you a lot of joy is now all literally all over the world, which is
well,
pretty amazing.
well, you're so kind.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention something really quickly. If there's something in your life that you can focus on that helps tremendously, and the wonderful thing about art is that it's all about what you can do, like what you can't do, like techniques that you can't do, or anything in art that you can't do. It doesn't even enter the equation. It doesn't matter. You can't do
Mhm.
it. So it's all about what you can do. So if you want to have a certain effect, you want to do a certain type of painting, you want to work with a certain type of paint, you just figure out ways to do it. And then every artist, no matter their ability or disability, finds their own ways to do things. And
Yeah.
I've never met two-sided painters or two painters that didn't have epilepsy, or two, or that work the same way. Everybody does it in different ways.
Mm.
But I just signed on with the Kennedy Center, and they made me a mentor for a program they just started. And I want to mention it because
Yes,
it's one of the
please.
coolest programs I've ever heard of, and it's just we've just started it. But the whole idea is for artists, for people with disabilities, to be
Hmm.
able to get into art and be able to take it wherever they want it to go.
Oh,
And so it's just help. So I'm the mentor, and we'll have office hours every month where we can talk. But if if they want to
Wow.
get into gallery shows, if they want to work with museums, if they want to make prints, they would just or just want to just talk about stuff like what mediums
Totally.
Oh.
or how to work through disability and having bad days and good days. And but the
Mhm.
really cool thing about it, I mean, I'm excited because I get to chat with amazing people. But the Kennedy Center and the people there are who are way smarter than I am and way more connected than I'll ever dream of being. So, and that's really what excites me is that we can have people with disabilities that want to get into the arts, that it's helping them deal with life, and then be able to take their art and actually get it in front of an audience, get it into places where
Mhm.
Yeah.
because the voices have just got to be out there.
Shared with us the difference between having a visible and
Yes.
an invisible disability. And yeah, if you could share that again with us, I mean, that really hit home for
Oh my
me for
goodness,
sure.
yeah, I think because I travel with a seeing eye dog, so whenever somebody sees me in public, I mean, it's really easy to see like, oh, this person has a disability. They're different,
Mhm.
and in a lot of ways, I think it's easier. If you're in a, and I'm not saying it's easier like if you're in a wheelchair or something like that. I'm not saying life is easy, but
Right.
in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, I think it's easier than having a hidden disability like epilepsy because you're you're going through life and people don't know it, and
Mhm.
so it's hidden. You're not sure
Yeah.
when you should tell people, if you should tell people,
Oh, yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just so it's
Yeah.
just always sort of there, and you don't know if when it's going to strike. I mean, like at least with the blindness, like 20 years ago, it was difficult, but I learned how to accommodate for it, and I don't really think about it anymore. I mean, it's not really a thing. I travel
Sure.
all the time. I usually fly 2 or 3 times a month.
Wow.
There's ways to deal with things. There's ways, and usually I'm by myself, or well, I have Eagle and me, we're always
Yeah.
together. But I mean, you figure out ways to do it, and then once you figured it out, it's done. But with
Mhm.
something like epilepsy, you don't know how the day is going to turn out. You don't
Mhm.
know. You're like,
Oh,
okay, well, I'm
yeah.
going to go shopping this afternoon, and then you wake up in the middle of the store, and you're
Yep.
like, oh crap, okay, this day took a turn.
Exactly.
Or it doesn't have to be as big as that. Like you're in school and you study for a test. You read a chapter. You have some petty muscle seizures, like really small. Maybe it's not even that big of a thing, but
Yeah.
it's enough to mess with your memory, and you don't remember that chapter you just read. You've got to go back and
Mhm.
read it again. So now everything's taking longer. It's harder.
Yeah.
And so you just never know. Or like for me, I stutter a lot whenever I have a little bit of activity. Like that's one of the
Mm.
signs that things are starting. I have like muscle twitches, and I have my myoclonic like little
Mhm.
things, and so I can tell when I'm starting to have a little bit of problems. I'm like, ooh, I need to back off a little bit and
Yeah.
rest, and
Okay.
do
Yeah.
it. That doesn't always take care of it, but at least it's I try to listen now, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
you just
that's oh
it
god,
makes it
trying to
hard.
listen. Totally. Well, even I mean, we were supposed to have this conversation a week ago and I had a seizure and,
Mhm.
and Lexi was like, "You're not doing this.
I was
We're
like,
going to reschedule." And I was like, "No, I'm fine. I can do it." She's like, "No, no, I'm looking at you over
No.
FaceTime and you do not look like you are able." And even just, so like you were saying, I like the pointing out the unpredictability of your
Yeah. And
day. You just
it's
don't
also
know.
so yeah, it's almost like invisible to us in a sense, like it's this invisible disease, and then once we actually have a seizure, most of us don't remember or see what that even looks like. Everyone
yeah,
else does. So we don't even see, the actual, uh, you know, event happening, and then we wake up and it's like everyone's, seen this thing that we haven't unless someone records it.
hmm
So, there's, like, multiple different invisibility aspects to it that's really messed up. But yeah, yeah, the having the it's not written on your forehead when you're in Target feeling like you might have a seizure, and so no one else is gonna have any idea what you're kind of thinking, what could happen, and
Totally.
but
Well,
yeah,
and
yeah, if
I
you
like
if
how like you pointed out we've talked because we've had so many conversations about this. When do you tell someone, when do you not? When do you, when is
Mhm.
it necessary? Like should I, like I have a medical alert bracelet. I'm like, does anyone even fucking read those? Like, I don't,
Yours is so cute. I wouldn't even know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, so there's just a lot, and obviously I don't think either Lexi or I are trying to make like a case for like one's harder than the other, but I think just acknowledging that there is a difference between invisible and
Yeah.
Yeah. And
wow, invisible. I still cannot remember the word.
Landon said, like, you guys were saying, like, we were going to do this last week, but whenever I got the email saying that we canceled, I mean, just like, because I know a lot of times, like, I worry, like, if I have to put things off and I worry about what people think, but whenever I got the email, I thought I was really proud. Like, I was proud of, for you, because it's hard sometimes to do
Be
that.
proud
like,
of this one because she's the one that made the call. So
no, I just have to throw down the hammer.
I mean, what does it matter if we wait a week to do the pod? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter, but to be able to stand up, for yourself.
And this community is the people who gets it.
I don't know. I think like for anybody that's happening, that is listening to us to us chat about this right now, I think it's important to know, like, it's okay to do like what you did. It's perfectly, it's great. Like, that's the right thing to do, and it's the best thing to do, and nobody really cares. I mean, like, it doesn't, like, at least in my mind, I blow things up and I think, oh my gosh, they did this and this and this, and I worry about it, and learning, like, well, you gotta take care of yourself, and and all this worry that we have about, I don't know what might happen if you cancel something. It doesn't. It's not even. I don't know. It doesn't. It's not a real thing. I don't think you.
Yeah, I think it's like, and it's still, it's one of those things that I think I still struggle with, me personally, because I'm like, well, John's planned his day around this, and now we're messing it up, and now, but like you said, it's not a thing, it's just, the thing is, and it would have been also like a terrible episode, because just side note, worse than my brain is now.
We could have showed,
I can barely come up with words today. Yeah, we could have had a post-ictal episode. Like,
yeah, but I mean, just because we're up here on this podcast, and Landis, just because you've been doing it for, what, almost 6 years, right? I think
we're at 6 years of epilepsy. Yeah.
6 years does not mean that we're, we don't struggle with stuff. So, it's always, I mean, you got to get up every day and work on it every single day. So
yeah,
there's never a time where it's just like easy.
It's weird. Like, I didn't realize, like, when you're post-ictal, like, after you've had a seizure and you think you feel normal, I didn't realize how not normal I was. My brain still was, and still, I did a series of paintings where I'd do a painting after I had a seizure. I would go and start working on something.
Okay.
And so, like, I would try it, like I did a portrait of a person, like, I felt their face, I did the portrait, and then so I had that, and then I had a seizure, and then I went and did their portrait again. But the painting, like, the paintings that I did, they're all fractured. It looks like broken glass. But in my mind, like, I am so convinced that I'm doing it perfect, like, it's the way that it should be. And then I go back later, and I'm like, what the heck?
Totally.
Oh, on those days I relied so much on my family to have to tell me, just be honest with me, and just be like, am I back to normal? Give me your feedback from the outside world. You mentioned, feeling people's faces, and it was so amazing to hear you, kind of be able to meet your son for the first time. And I know you also, described how you met him and how you got to kind of, see what he looked like. If you could describe that really quickly. I know that was
before I lost my eyesight, I thought the only thing I knew about blindness is what I saw on TV and movies, and and that's wildly inaccurate. And so I just thought that every blind person could feel people's faces, and that's how they knew what they looked like. I do feel people's faces, and I know what they look like, but I'm using painting techniques, and it's something that I teach people too. And first, it was very rudimentary, but it's gotten much more detailed over the years. But whenever my son was born, I mean, he was just born, and I was able to cut the cord, and then he was, and then they laid him on his mom's stomach, and I was able to feel his little face, and just see what he looked like, and actually visualize and understand what he looked like. When I first felt his face, I mean, I think I understood color really for the first time, and all
Wow.
the color in all my paintings changed from that moment on, and it was just, and everything got
Wow.
much brighter, much just very very different than.
Mm.
But just being able to see his face, and that was one thing too, where it really pushed me to want to do workshops. And um, most of my workshops are free, and unless we're raising money for something, because I was thinking everybody who's visually impaired needs to be able to see their child's face. Like, everybody needs to be able to do that,
Yeah.
make that connection. But gosh, I don't know.
It
I don't
That's
know.
didn't
so
stop
Sorry, I'm
you.
beautiful.
making me think about
No,
it.
no,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful too that like you say it changed the colors of your paintings,
Yeah.
it changed kind of how, I don't know, just your perspective, just even being able to see your son's face that way. And I think that's just a very beautiful story that it just adds the beauty of your story is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Oh, well, thank you. Now he's 15, and he's taller than I am, and his voice is deeper. So crazy at that little tiny face. It's
Oh,
like,
Now you
"Hey,
gotta like
Dad, how
reach
you
up to
doing?"
feel
He's
them.
like, "Hey, buddy."
Oh, yeah, no, every time he walks in and you're like, "Are you the same person? You got your
Yeah.
voice is way deeper than the last time I saw you, like, yesterday." Oh,
Oh my
man, that is
God.
such a fun
Well,
time.
John, this has been just an amazing conversation. I feel like we could talk to you forever.
Yes.
And we want to thank you so much for just sharing with us your story, being so vulnerable, and talking about the hard times, the bad times, and the glorious times, and how some of those hard times led to the beautiful moments, and that we get to look at a piece of
Yes.
work that you're working on right now. Like, that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
amazing.
I wish it was
So
further
thank
along,
you.
guys. Sorry.
No, it
No,
looks
that's
beautiful, and like Landis said earlier, we'll put a link, for you guys to go check out the rest of his artwork, and, I mean,
yes.
Landis and I were shopping online before we came, to this interview today, so you probably will have a couple more customers.
Yeah. Okay, so this week's epilepsy fave of the week is called Rise Above Epilepsy. It is an amazing resource. It's riseaboveepilepsy.com. It's an amazing resource by an amazing advocate, Tiffany Karos. And she created this site as a resource. She's an epilepsy blogger, advocate, content creator, and the founder of the Epilepsy Network. So she certainly has like tips, tricks, and wisdom to share on life with epilepsy. You can find it on whatthefpodcast.com under our faves, or you can just go straight to her site
Mm.
at riseaboveepilepsy.com. Tiffany, thank you for all the work you put out there. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And then we've got
Emma from
our
Sweden is our fan of the
Oh,
week this week.
yeah,
Yes.
we have someone from Sweden writing in. And she DM'd us, and that's a great way
Mhm.
to get in touch with us, guys. We love
Yeah.
those DMs. I mean, hopefully one day we'll be so big they'll be like, please stop DMing us. But I don't think, not right now. No.
Yep.
She said, thank you for a great podcast. Listened to an episode and can relate so much to what you guys were saying. Absolutely no one talks about epilepsy here in Sweden, so thanks again. Emma, we are happy to keep talking about epilepsy, and we
Yeah.
really appreciate you listening. And if there's anything we can do from here for Sweden, just let us know.
Yes.
Okay, well, guys, we'll see you next week with the
Yep,
next
see ya.
episode.